Hello there, I'm Kios, the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin, all things, everything. And before we get into it, if you are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Holy Grail, the magical chalices around the world. Now, I found this to be a very intriguing article regarding the various stories of various different cultures that had their own form of a holy grail, which piqued my interest, seeing as there are many versions of the Great Flood story throughout the world. There are also different versions of Noah. For example, in the Hindu text, Noah is actually called Manu. So, when you hear about stories like that, where, stories of Noah's Ark are told almost in the exact same details, just in a different region of the world, you begin to question the true history, or I should say the controlled history that we are presented with in pertaining to religions, cultures, technology, you name it. But without further ado, let us get into it. Alrighty, this article was updated December 9th, 2021 by Mark Pinkham. The truth about the Holy Grail, magical chalices around the world. Most people identify one special chalice as the Holy Grail. Others point out that the Holy Grail legends composed in Europe during the 12th and 15th centuries enumerate more than 10 different Holy Grails. A third group contends that Holy Grails have existed around the globe for thousands of years. In truth, Holy Grails have been everywhere. Apologies. In truth, Holy Grails have been everywhere, in every age. They have taken the form of chalices, spears, skulls, platters, stones, swords, cauldrons, and even books. What makes an object a Holy Grail is its possession of a special power that has been called the Holy Spirit by Christians, the alchemical force by alchemists, the Kundalini by Hindu yogis. Legend has it that if you drink or eat from a Holy Grail, or even touch it, its power will enter you and initiate a process of alchemical transformation that will subsequently heal you, enlighten you, and possibly even make you immortal. The most famous historical grail is the Cup of Christ, or Joseph of Arimathea's cup. This is the vessel that Joseph of Arimathea caught the blood and sweat of the Messiah after he was taken down from the cross, and it is also the chalice that Jesus passed among his disciples during the Last Supper. According to one legend, the archangel Gabriel instructed Joseph and 11 other missionaries to travel with the cup and take 2 flasks or crutes containing Jesus' blood and sweat to Glastonbury. Once settled in their new homeland, Joseph and his companions constructed St. Mary's Chapel, which became the chalice's reliquary and the first Christian church in Europe. The chapel was eventually torn down and replaced with a larger chapel that was subsequently incorporated into the structure of Glastonbury Abbey. Before Joseph died, it is said that he buried the cup of Christ in a large mound of Glastonbury, now known as Chalice Hill. Or states another myth, Joseph secreted his holy grail in the Chalice well, where today blood-colored water symbolizes the blood of the Messiah, continuously flows out to nourish and heal all bathe in or drink it. Fascinating. I've heard rumors that the Holy Grail is in France. But let's continue. Here we have the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset, England. According to an alternate legend regarding the cup of Christ, after the Ascension, Joseph's chalice was taken by St. Peter to Rome, where it became the principal cup used by the early popes during the Holy Communion. Then, in approximately 258 CE, when the Roman Emperor Valerianus was regularly persecuting bishops and other high-ranking Catholic Church officials, a Vatican soldier took the chalice to Spain. It eventually made its way to the Cathedral of Valencia, where it became famous as the Santo Chalice of Valencia. According to the Vatican, this is the true cup of Christ. The Santo Chalice, meaning holy chalice, is a stone chalice made out of a type of red agate that sits upon the ornate base, studded with 27 pearls, 2 rubies, and 2 emeralds. While the agate cup dates from the time of Christ, its decorative base was added much later. Well, you know, those modern day Christians, they do like to be flashy. Here we have an image that is said to be the Holy Chalice. It says below, only the cup at the top is said to be the holy. The rest was added later. Yeah, I don't know if Indy would have been able to figure this one out. Let's continue. Although the cup of Christ is indeed special, it is just one of many holy grails, dating from the time of the Passion, known collectively as the Arm Christi. These are the articles of the Passion that became saturated with the spiritual power of Jesus while touching his body and or holding his fluids. The holy grails of the Arm Christi include the true cross that Jesus was nailed upon during the crucifixion, the crown of thorns, the veil of Veronica, the cloth that briefly covered his head, the shroud of Turin, the cloth that covered Jesus' corpse, and the spear of Longius. These holy grails have since been disappeared around the globe. The spear of Longius eventually found a home inside the Vatican pillar. The true cross was divided up, and its shard later interred within many cathedrals and churches in Europe and the US. The nails of the true cross were removed and used to create both the iron crown of Lombardy that Napoleon crowned himself with, as well as the spear of St. Maurice, aka the Spear of Destiny. This was the prized Holy Grail spear of the Holy Roman Emperors and later of Adolf Hitler. Legend has it that the Knights Templars possessed all the articles of the Passion at one time or another. Most of them were discovered by the warrior monks during the Fourth Crusade when they entered a small chapel in the Boccaglione Palace in Constantinople and discovered many articles of the Passion along with the head of John the Baptist. The knights would later claim that John's head, which they called Baphomet. Oh boy. Oh, well, I don't know how many people know about that part of the Templars, but I digress. Emanated the same spiritual power it did when it was on the body of the Baptist, thus making it a true Holy Grail. Since John had become known at that time by the inner circle of Templars as the savior and maker of the order, his head immediately became the most cherished Holy Grail of the Knights. Man, that'd be an epic movie or show to see. Here we have an illustration of the head of St. John the Baptist. Other Holy Grails worldwide. Around the globe, many Holy Grails have gained fame before and after the Passion. An earlier Holy Grail from the Holy Land, Solomon's Chalice, was made from a huge emerald discovered in the Mediterranean Sea. The gem was brought back to King Solomon, a world-renowned alchemist who had then had it carved into an alchemical chalice. Although not much is known of Solomon's Chalice, the famous Russian explorer and painter Nicholas Roerich claimed that he found legends of it in Russia's Slovik monastery. After studying these legends, Roerich remarked, quote, "Great is the chalice of Solomon, fashioned from precious stone. On the chalice are inscribed 3 verses in Sumerian characters, and no one can explain them." End quote. Sumerian. Are we getting ties to the Anunnaki? That could be a possibility. You know, I was listening to a priest, and he has this series about Buddha. And he was explaining through various texts that previous theologian scholars and researchers, 60, almost 100 years prior to him, they were all coming to a conclusion that Christ was the reincarnation of the Buddha. It's been a minute since I've seen it, but the reason why I'm bringing that up to you is that whether it's Christianity, whether it's Hinduism, Judaism, Allah, Krishna, Buddha, Jehovah, Jesus, it's all the same. It's all the same. Just something to keep in mind as you do your own studies. Now let's continue. Another ancient holy grail associated with Sumer is the Sumerian Grail. Arthur Edward Waite stated that he learned of this grail vessel from one of his colleagues, Dr. Waddell, who apparently had a piece of it in his possession. Waddell stated that fragments of the Sumerian Grail had been discovered in the foundations of a tower belonging to the oldest Sun Temple in Mesopotamia. Now, they're not going to tell you that Sun Temple worship is no different than Christianity, but you know what? I'm not going to get into all of that because some people ain't ready for it and some people just don't want to hear it. But hey, I continue. The vessel had anciently been hidden there by King Udu of Kish, the great-grandson of King Dur, the first Sumerian king and original owner of the chalice, who had apparently captured the cup from Aborigine Chaldean serpent worshippers. Oh wow, this is getting... When he replaced dragon worship with a sun cult. Oh man. Man, a lot of y'all are not... I don't know how the Christians are going to feel about this one. I don't know how the Christians are going to feel about this one. I'm going to repeat that. When he replaced dragon worship with sun cult, just want to repeat that one more time for everybody in the back. King Dur then engraved the vessel with the oldest known historical inscription in the world, which contained a genealogy of ancient Sumerian kings. Man, this is getting kinky. Persia's contribution to the list of holy grails includes Jami Jashid, the Cup of Jamshid, which was discovered by the legendary Persian king Jamshid when he was excavating an ancient city in Central Asia. Now, maybe you guys can ask yourself, because I'm asking myself, how the hell did a Persian king wind up in Central Asia? Why? What? Explain that to me. And here's an illustration of ancient Persian poet Hafez looking at the cup of Jashmid, a Turkish manuscript from 1477. But what I'm still trying to figure out and need some understanding and clarification. How did a Persian king end up in Central Asia? I'm thinking Central Asia. I'm thinking China? China? He was in China? What was he doing in China? How did he get to China? See, these are the kind of things that we don't get to learn about in history. Like, they're not going to talk to us and tell us about the fact that there was a Persian king that was hanging out doing excavation work in Central Asia. We're not going to get told about that, which is absolutely crazy. It's mind-boggling to me. I'm wondering, like, what more history about this Persian king can we learn about his time in Central Asia? And this is all I'm saying. All I'm saying is it's just crazy to me how many people know about this. How many historical scholars know about this? I don't know. It's just crazy to me. I'm sorry. This is just wild to me. Let's get back into it. All right, let's continue. Jamshid's radiant chalice, which was made of pure turquoise, could both reveal the future and transform a human being into an immortal god. Another famous Persian holy grail resides at the court of King Khusro, known as the Nagmo, the Knight's Cup. This chalice was named among Persian knights at least 1,000 years before Arthurian knights pursued their magical holy grail. And here we have an illustration of King Arthur's knights gathered at the round table to see a vision of the Holy Grail. In the Far East, the existence of an ancient Holy Grail called the Chalice of Buddha was revealed in Nicholas Roych when he traveled across China and Mongolia in the 1920s. Buddhist monks informed Roerich that the origin of the chalice was contained within a jatka, an anecdotal story extracted directly from the life of Buddha, which stated, now remember when I told you that Christ was the reincarnation of Buddha? Just keep all that in mind with this. Quote, from the four lands came the four guardians of the world. They offered 4 chalices made of black stone, and the Buddha, full of compassion for the 4 wise men, accepted the 4 chalices. He placed one inside the other and ordained, "Let there be one," and the edges of the four became visible as outlines. All the chalices formed one. The Buddha accepted food in the newly formed chalice, and having partaken of food, he offered thanks. End quote. Roerich acquired additional information about the chalice of Buddha when he passed through cities on the Silk Road. He writes, quote, "Karashar is the last resting place of the chalice of Buddha, as cited by the historians. The chalice of the Blessed One was brought here from Peshawar and disappeared here. It is said the chalice of Buddha will be found again when the time of the Shambhala, the Golden Age, approaches." End quote. You see how all these stories are the same? And the older you get, the more older religions, the story is more clearer. Just something to keep in mind, my holy scholars and religious practitioners out there. A better known than the Chalice of Buddha is China's royal cauldron, which is a large golden pot known to have once brought long life and prosperity to some of the early Chinese emperors. The royal cauldron was renowned for its alchemical properties and for magical manifesting within itself the elixir of immortality for righteous emperors, including the Emperor Hongti and the beneficent Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty. But the golden cauldron would only assist righteous emperors. Here we have a type of tripod cauldron or ding from the late Shang Dynasty, China. Otherwise, as the case of the evil emperor Shi Huangti of the Qin Dynasty, the royal cauldron would mysteriously disappear and remain hidden until a more well-disposed ruler ascended the throne of China. Yeah. Interesting. I'm sure Xi Jinping was hoping that he'd be that guy. Fascinating. But as I was saying, when it comes to the Holy Grail, it's clear that there were many variations of the Holy Grail. Not only that, we can clearly see that the older you get with these stories of the Holy Grail, the more it becomes apparent that later religions were copying or were inspired by these similar tales. It's a very fascinating world that we live in, watching these great religions essentially practice and worship the same deity, yet regard one another as enemies. What a great trick they have played upon the masses. Be mindful, everyone. Do your own due diligence on whatever religious affiliation you support, aspire, and believe in. Be sure to do your due diligence. Learn the bad and the good. Learn the beautiful and the ugly. And most importantly, acknowledge the gray. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far and you enjoy what you've heard, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.